So, as it says on screen, my name is Tom Renner, and my talk is about why you might want to stay at a company for longer than you'd originally planned, and how to get everything you want from your career while you're doing so. So, it's a quick introduction to the topic, why I think you should care about this. This is a codebar day focused on careers, so you're probably looking for a job right now. Or alternatively, given that the average career at a tech company lasts around 2.5 years, you're about to start looking for a new job. There's also, I guess, a third option, which is that you've just started at a new job, but you have half an eye on the next one, which is coming in around 2 years' time, where you have a better CV, and so you'll be able to get a better job somewhere more fun, in fact, or fancier. Or alternatively, there's a fourth group which might just contain me. I'm not sure about that one, which is that you've got a bit annoyed at people over the course of several years telling you that you spent far too long at one company and you think they're wrong and you have good reasons why. So if any of those sound like you, please do stay and listen. Or if they don't, and you'd just like to hear some alternative opinions on how you could organize your career, hopefully I'll be able to give you some over the next 20 minutes. So a few words about me, just for context, because a lot of this is going to be based on my experiences in my career. So you guys know why I care about this. I spent over 6 years at my first company, a company called Haplo, that Google's auto captioning doesn't know what that word is, so it always gets it wrong. Well, this time it didn't even try. Shame. Yeah, so I spent over 6 years there, and I've just started at my second company. I moved because I have moved country. I'm now based in Germany, where I was previously based in London. And I had a really good time at my first company, staying there so long. When I was starting my career, the wisdom that I received from the internet and recruitment companies and people I was interviewing with was that, it's this industry standard of 2 to 3 years at a company it's around for a reason. It's the best way of doing things. It might even be the only way of doing things, and doing it any other way is wrong. I know several examples of people who have stayed at their first company longer, maybe 5 or 6 years, like I have, maybe even longer, who it's really worked out for. And now I've been a professional a bit longer, and got more of a network within the industry. I know there are quite a few people who, like me, don't think that it's moving really regularly, really often is a good thing, is actually going to help you in the long term. But yeah, as I said, I didn't hear anyone make that argument to me when I was starting, so I decided to stand up and tell people about it. I do have a disclaimer now, a warning about everything that's about to come. I'm aware that a lot of it is from my personal experience, and I am a very privileged white male, and there are also lots of ways of doing your career well. What I'm really trying to do is give people some ideas on alternative routes through your career path that might be interesting. Obviously, the fact that tech has a bias problem towards people like me is going to influence my advice. So if you don't think it's going to work for you, that's completely valid. So to look at how to get what you want from your career staying at the same firm, let's have a look at why people move companies. This graph is taken from Stack Overflow's developer survey. They run one every year. This is the 2020 version. And it had, this year, I think it had 65,000 respondents talking about the state of the industry as a whole. It's a flawed data set, but partially at least because the technology industry is very heavily skewed in some directions and has its own biases. But it's a large data set and an interesting one for us to start with. So in order to keep this talk to a sane length, I'm just going to look at the top 4, which are moving to get better compensation, so you want more pay, wanting to work with new technologies, curiosity about other opportunities and what's out there, and moving to look for growth or leadership opportunities. The other reason why I'm only looking at the top 4 and not any more is because I have really no counter argument for point 5. If at any point your work-life balance is not working for you, you absolutely should move immediately. So, to come to the first point, and possibly the trickiest one to discuss, at least if you're British like I am, getting better pay. The subtitle for this section is a question I got about 3 years into my career, and I told someone that I hadn't moved, which was, have you ever had a raise? Lots of the received wisdom is that moving job is the only way to get the raise that you want. So I'm going to give you some information that might help you in salary negotiations within one company. The first bit of advice I have is to make sure that you come prepared. Know, roughly speaking, what you're worth, do some research, have a think about how you're going to have that conversation. But some content that might be interesting to think about is to know that replacing you is going to be very expensive for the company. A lot of recruitment work is done through recruitment agencies, and in London at least, they're going to want at least 15, probably 20% of your annual salary as an upfront fee for finding your replacement. So that's already a large chunk of money. But there are also other costs that might not be obvious to you. So all of the time taken to find your replacement where you're not working there. People need to invest time, which is a cost to the company of interviewing and as part of the hiring process. And then there's all of the onboarding where they're not going to be working at full efficiency and they're taking other people's time. So there's a real direct cost to you moving. And your replacement is also going to be moving companies and therefore looking to probably improve their salary. So your company could just pay you more so you stayed and save all of these costs. There's also the point that you should be able to make, which is that you're going to do a better job than the average replacement who's out there on the market. If they're hiring at the same seniority as you, which they probably will be, by definition, as well as all of the years experience that you have at the point you want to leave, you already know the customers, the code base, your colleagues. So you're by definition going to be better prepared to do that role than the average person who's out there on the market. Another disclaimer, a second one, I think there's 3 or 4 in this talk. Speaking human words good can be really hard. Yeah, while these are some arguments that you might want to think about making, there are people who are much better placed than I am to tell you how to make those. And the way that you phrase them is going to be very situation dependent. You know, how well you know your boss, your company, who you're having this conversation with, etc. So point number 2 on our 4-point plan is people leave to get to play with new technologies. For me, that question was, how do you get another job with so little on your CV, having worked at the same place, using all of the same tech and tools? It's really tempting to move on to the newer, shinier things, but letting you in on a bit of a secret about the technology industry, everybody uses old tech. No one is using all of the new and shiny stuff, and I actually have receipts to prove this. So Facebook's tech stack, I got this site called StackShare, includes PHP, which came out in 1995. Cassandra's the database system, which is 2008. Even React, which well, I at least think of as reasonably new and shiny, is now 8 years old. Now it's 2021. Just because you hear about a new and shiny technology doesn't mean you need to jump ship to go use it. Similarly, Twitter. It's originally a Ruby on Rails app that came out in 2004. Their JavaScript is based on Express.js in 2010. And I picked these examples because they are literally the giants in the tech world. And if they're using things that are seen as old and outdated, like jQuery and Rails and Mustache, then you really don't need to worry about those being the things that you've got on your CV. All of the really important skills that you're learning, especially early on in your career, are going to be transferable. People are going to be far more interested when you're interviewing about what you can do with the technologies, rather than which languages or frameworks you actually have on your CV. No one's CV has all of the technologies on it, believe me. And also, given that there's only limited amounts of time in your working life that you can spend learning things rather than doing your day-to-day work, how much of that time do you want to be spending learning yet another new framework? Like, wouldn't you rather be solving harder problems with a tool set that you really know than continually learning a new tool set and becoming a beginner again? The third highest reason why people leave their current role is curiosity about what else is out there. A question that I got throughout my time at Haplo, from about years 2, when it seems like everyone was expecting you to leave, through till I finished at year 6, was don't you get bored? I think in general, the tech industry has a real grass is greener problem. There's so many things out there that sound new and exciting, and you just want to go and do them all. I do too. It's super fun. But leaving just to find what else is out there isn't going to sound good in interview. And I've actually been in an interview where someone said that was the reason. It doesn't sound good to other companies because they're going to think that you're going to jump ship again in 18 months when you see something else that sounds cooler. So at the very least, if this is your main motivation, you just want to try something new, then you are going to have to find a more convincing reason to give them an interview. I would also say that despite the glossy advertising that goes out, every workplace has problems. Because so much of the tech world is startup based, these companies are really vying for attention, and they need to make what they're doing sound disruptive and innovative, and the best thing since Facebook in 2006. I should know when Facebook started. Anyway, the most exciting new thing out there. But that's not really true under the hood. There's always a pro and con situation going on. So just make sure that you're not throwing away the pros that you have at your current workplace for some unknown cons at the new place. Also, if you are able to spend a bit longer at a company and seeing a project through to completion, it's going to look amazing on your CV, saying, this is something that, I was part of the team that started it, or I joined it at this early stage. We saw it through to users actually having it, and you got real user feedback, and saw it in production. That looks amazing next time. And having this sort of longer term ownership of your code and the decisions that you made, changes you totally. I couldn't resist putting that in. It gives you a different perspective on the trade-offs that come with these decisions. You see the long-term impact of them, and especially if you're looking for more senior roles later on, having first-hand experience of the trade-offs that come with technical decisions, from seeing the pain points that you delayed till later, seeing that later happen because you've been there long enough to feel that pain, yeah, that experience is going to look really good, and it's going to stand you in really good stead later in your career. Speaking of these later senior roles, the fourth reason why people leave is looking for opportunities for growth and leadership. A question I got about a year ago now in the pub, which felt really good to hear 5 and a bit years into your career, was someone saying, "So you're still a junior then?" Which is a fair point. If people can assume that you don't get any leadership experience or growth opportunities if you stay at the same place for a long time. But that doesn't have to be the case. And my top tip for getting growth staying at one company is to tell your boss what it is you want to do. You can tell it's my top tip because I've put it in bold and underlined it. Any sensible boss is going to want to give people jobs that they want, responsibilities that they're looking for, and make them happy in their workplace because they'll want you to stay. As you know, as was before, caveat here: if you don't have a sensible boss who wants to hear those things, then yeah, by all means, do leave to find the growth you need in your career. And a corollary to this, to telling them what you want to do, so that you can you have more of a chance of achieving that within your company, is if you see something that looks interesting, whether it's happening in your team, whether it's happening in a slightly different part of the company, volunteer to do it. Even if, and possibly especially if, you're not certain that you're the right person for it. And when you do volunteer, volunteer loudly. That means, make sure the people who need to hear you volunteer do so. Driving your own growth by volunteering for things that sound interesting to you is going to really pay off in the long term. If you are doing something informally within your company, if you do have responsibilities, no matter how small they are, maybe it's you're meant to be updating some documentation regularly of something. Make sure that is formally acknowledged, so that your work isn't just invisible extras, so that you're getting the credit that your work deserves. And by formally acknowledged, I mean maybe it's documented somewhere in your company manual somewhere. Maybe it's make sure that your boss is aware that you're the responsible person for it. Bring it up in review meetings, those kinds of things. It's like, what have you been spending your time on? Of course, that's part of your job. And then my final tip for growth is to make sure that you get a new job title every 2 to 3 years, even if you haven't moved within the organizational chart. External, even if you're getting all of the growth you want within the company, external markers of prestige are important, and so that other people can see that you're progressing, even if internally everyone knows that you're now in charge of lots of things and you've developed a lot over the last 3 years. Right, so to wrap up some of the things I said there, a question I got quite a lot from, well, specifically one of my friends who would make a point to ask me this about every 6 months when I was possibly going to leave my company. So shout out to Patrick. Anyway, all of the reasons that are given above, plus many, many more that you might want to change companies, are completely fair. And I definitely don't want anyone to take away from this talk that I'm saying you need to stay, it's the right thing to do. But if you could get the growth and fulfillment in all of these categories that you need without leaving your current company, would you go? And if the answer to that question is no, or maybe think about some of the tips that I've given within the talk and see whether they could help you have an honest conversation with your company about what you want in your career and what extra you need to be really happy in your job. The worst that can happen really is that you're going to turn it into a conversation about why you're leaving, because they can't give you the opportunities that somewhere else could do. And yeah, I think in conclusion, I think it's just really worthwhile to give your current company the opportunity to give you what you want. And if you do, you might find yourself spending longer there than you expected. Thanks very much.